Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Welcome to Coffee and the Bull with Mike and John. Today's episode is going to be navigating your scars. We're going to kind of talk about the scars of life, both visible and invisible. We'll get into that in a little bit. First, want to give a shout out to Gina, made up last name, whatever she said Gina. In there. Thank you for being the first to send an email. We're going to address that towards the end of our podcast today. Also to the gentleman asking for feet pics, we're going to pass on that this time. But if things get hard,
that's a legit thing that happened.
That is, if things get hard though, we may hit you
have
up.
a business venture.
Right. So that being said, Mike's going to kind of start us off.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about, as you go through life, especially when you're as dumb as we are, and you don't have necessarily all the safety precautions in place. Like there's a reason
Right.
OSHA exists and personal protective equipment, all that other stuff exists. It's because guys do a lot of dumb stuff. Like if you're using a grinder and we never wear some safety glasses.
Not where I thought you were going with that.
Or anything like that. And our idea of keeping things from getting in our eyes is we just squint a little bit.
Right, like really hard.
The harder you squint, the more protection you have. It's way better than Angie 87 or 85, whatever
they are.
And but one thing you notice, especially as time goes on, you look at your hands, you start seeing little scars here and scars there, whether and you'll remember some of them. Some of them you're like, I have no idea where that come from.
Right.
And those are things that while they're minor, they still represent some form of trauma that took place. Some form of injury. Even though it was minor, it probably healed in a matter of a day or 2 days. But there was still a healing process that took place, and it's the same thing where, whether you have a broken bone or go in for surgery, hey, you lay a motorcycle down on the roadway and you get road rash or whatever. Like there's signs that your body's been through trauma, and that's what those scars represent. And it's also not all bad though. Like
Right.
Everybody likes to tell a good story about if it's an appendectomy scar, probably not that great of a story.
Right.
If it's a gunshot, hey, you probably got a little bit of a story to go with it. And so it's one of those things where it represents, hey, this trauma took place at some point, whether it was minor, whether it was major, but every single one of them had a healing process that had to take place. You didn't just, oh, that's going to be a great scar and then go about life. No, you had to, spend the downtime and the time of, make sure it didn't get infected and things like that. And that's kind of one of the things that you've got to do in your own personal life also is to make sure that, what you're going through doesn't get infected, because that can extend the healing process or eliminate the healing process altogether where you never recover from that, and so it's one of the things where when you start looking at your own personal body, your body represents what you've been through to everybody else around you. If I see somebody walking around and they've got a giant scar on their knee or whatever, it indicates to me they might have ACL surgery or something like that, or maybe even something cooler than that. That's not really that interesting of a story, but it shows that, hey, something's going on, and even though the healing process is taking place and they're now past that, whether it was 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, or even 2 years, they may walk the same and talk the same now, but they're never going to be the same from prior to that incident taking place. And so that's kind of where we wanted to kind of look at today is as you start looking at your body, and you see all these different stories, the stories of those, and if I don't know your stories, but I see the scars, I can kind of guess what they are. But without you actually telling me, I'm not going to know what they are.
Right.
And that's, it's going to circle back to the same dead horse that we've been beating, with a club for the last couple of weeks, is that, getting out and telling that story of the scars is really what's going to change how we live life.
Right. You ever wonder where that expression came from?
Beating a dead horse?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like somebody didn't like horses, and I'm scared of heights and horses. So
Right. I'm just curious. Like, at what point was somebody like, "Hey, man, you're beating that dead horse"?
Well, really why do we care about people clubbing seals, but we don't care about people beating dead horses?
Right. Nobody stepped up for them.
Right. Poor horses. I get they get to be dog food, but
So the other side of what Mike's talking about, and so most of our conversations typically trail off randomly like that, so don't be surprised if it happens often. But the other side of it is the scars that you have that you can't see. And we've like Mike said, we beat the dead horse and everything else. So we're gonna dabble in a different one that we really haven't touched here lately, and that's gonna be professionally, okay, with your career. Because as we all know, we've talked about relationships, and we've
Right.
kind of dabbled a little bit on being a father and things like that. But I know personally, when I decided to quit a job, it was I had worked 2.5 years, and I'm talking busted my butt to get this move to another position that was more what I thought I'd be interested in doing at that job. And when the time came, after they had told me repeatedly, everybody,
It's
like,
just a matter of time.
yeah, we're gonna get you over here. We're gonna get you over here. You're gonna get to do this. I got pulled aside after I'd found out somebody else had gotten the position that didn't deserve it. From my point of view, they may have. I don't think they did. I basically got told, like, hey, you're too valuable in the position that you're in, but we don't value you enough to move you to another division or promote you or give you a pay raise.
Right. Right.
And that was the moment in my brain where I was like, I have given you 2.5 years. The only time I took off was when you made me take off, and I have more overtime than anybody else. So I've proved I'm loyal. I've proved I'm here, and I proved I want this.
You're competent.
Right. Like nobody had a doubt. The only thing anybody has ever said about me is either A, you'd be great if you'd learn to shut the F up, or great initiative. Terrible judgment, but great initiative.
Right.
And those are fair assessments. I won't argue those at this point in life anymore. But it was just a massive kick. It was like, why am I here?
Right.
You're paying me the lowest out of this area. I could be making double what I'm making somewhere else, doing far less than what I'm doing here. And I'll be fair, I made a decent but terrible mistake. And I learned from my mother when I was a young kid that everything in life is a lesson or a blessing. And that was her little thing that she always gave me. You're either going to learn something or you're going to be blessed by it. And I've often found most of the things that have gone wrong in my life have been both. And I followed the grass is greener on the other side mentality, chased a job with the promise of grandeur, and it ended terribly. The shiny things were waved in front of my face, and I chased after them and really thought that I'd finally gotten the chance and opportunity. I will say I probably shot myself in the foot with my big mouth, but it is what it is. And that came with the, hey, surprise, you don't have a job anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But from everything I learned in that, number one, just because it walks like a duck and talks like a duck doesn't mean you can trust it to taste like a duck. Sometimes it's bullshit. But it showed me, one, who my friends are. It showed me a big golden lesson on the people I could trust and actually, guarantee had my back. But on the other side of it, it helped me realize that dream that I thought was the dream, I don't need a title to chase that.
Mm-hmm.
Because right after they yanked that rug out from underneath us, we spent the next 3 months embarrassing the shit out of them.
Right.
And it was one of those, like, yep, swallow your pride, but at the end of the day, I'm making you look bad by myself, and you have a
Right.
team. So, but moving on from that really affected me in the sense that it's not the most damaging thing that happened in my life. There was a positive to it, but in that moment, it was like, these people are telling me I'm not worth a shit, but unless I stay in my current position, and these people are stroking my ego only to shoot me down. And when you get brought all the way up here and then literally just dropped on your face without a parachute, your emotional sense goes, what's the point?
Right.
Like, why am I busting my ass for this?
So what do you think the answer to that would be? When you're in that spot and you're like, one, it's a kick in the balls, for lack of a better term. It's a letdown, and a lot of people, when you get given that situation and you explain it to, say, your friends or your parents or whoever it is that you start talking about it to, a lot of their advice is, okay, well, that might be a blessing. Everything happens for a reason. I find in my experience that doesn't make me feel better.
Right.
That doesn't solve the issue. And but also notice that it changes how I start viewing things.
Right.
Whether it be with that agency or that position. So for the guy who's going to work, or knowing that he's getting overlooked, or he's just got overlooked or whatever, what would your advice to him be for that situation?
So I'm a firm believer in two theories on this. One of them is if at the end of the day when you get home, you hang your hat up and you're giving it 110% and you're not appreciated, hang the hat up and go somewhere you will be.
Right.
But in that same breath, if you've only been there 3-4 months and you're not giving them
patient.
Right, be patient with it, because there are places of employment that are going to give you that opportunity, but you may just be at the wrong place.
Right.
And as we've discovered now, you don't have to be at this big fancy $1 million corporation that's got $10 million to blow to be appreciated and valued. Now, granted, you may not be at a $10 million company. You may be at like a $100,000 company.
Right.
But they're giving you everything you need. They're not, down your throat. They're not up, constantly trying to tell you how to be more politically correct. They're not trying to hold your hand and babysit you and micromanage you. And they give you that freedom to run or hang yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about how you take advantage of it. And so to kind of get back on track, everything is perspective. And I feel like there are types of people in the world that can handle life on their own.
Right.
They can hit rock bottom, realize, hey, I'm on the bottom. I need to grab my bootstraps and handle my own business. There are people that need somebody to lean on when they hit those rock bottom times. And try as I may, I've learned, while I can be that first type of personality and I can get myself out of anything, because for the longest time I genuinely...
Right, it's a John Wayne mentality.
Right.
Nothing against John Wayne. Great
No,
movies.
right.
Bad mentality.
Right. I genuinely felt like I had to do everything by myself. I couldn't trust in anybody. I couldn't confide in, my closest people, the problems that I had. But I found that by leaning on somebody from time to time, not so much as a bother, but just in those moments where it was like, fuck, I need a break. Mm-hmm. Like, I just need to get this weight lifted off of me. That I can do both. I can be a strong personality to handle my own problems, but at the same time, it's nice to have somebody to lean on. What you don't want to find yourself doing is getting to that point where you're like, I don't have it in me to do this on my own.
Right.
And I've cut everybody off for so long that I don't have anybody to lean on, because that's when you get yourself in that dark quicksand pit that you just can't get out of.
Right.
And
well, so if I could interrupt for a second, when we first had our conversation, we discussed it in the last episode, or maybe the one prior to it, where you were struggling with some stuff at work, and it was that being passed over for that promotion,
right.
Or transfer into the specialized division, and we kind of that's where we sat down and we had a moment where it's like, okay, because you were at the point of, hey, what's the point of this? Why go through all this if you just if you're not going to see the fruit of it,
right?
And
no, because I remember I'd called you. That was what had spurred that whole conversation, was because I was literally about to be like, F this, I'm coming up there. Like, I'll hold the bucket of nails for you, like anything.
And I want to bring up a point, because we fall into the trap constantly of, okay, it's not that bad because this dude's got it worse. The
Right,
guy who,
right, right.
hey, his family just got, destroyed in a car crash and he's now going home to an empty house. Obviously, you don't want to go vent. Oh, I got passed up on this promotion, man. You don't want to do that to him. But also, what we do is we go, okay, it's not as bad as this guy, so I need to shut up and keep it to myself.
Right, right.
But that was a moment that you needed somebody was on something that would be looked at as relatively minor.
Yeah.
If you were to look at it from the scar aspect, hey, it's not representing a death. It's not representing a very super traumatic experience, but you still needed some help.
Right.
And so I want to stress that where, sometimes it's based on the how much other stuff you have going on. That minor thing could be what puts you over
Right.
the edge.
That could be the what do they call it? The straw that broke the camel's back.
If you look at, I've been through a couple of the different courses that they make you go through where they explain mental stress and trauma and all that other stuff, and they use the representation of either a garbage can or a cup. You fill a garbage can with garbage. Eventually you can only put so much. No matter how much you push it down, it's eventually going to overflow, and it's going to overflow into your house. And same thing with the water cup. You only pour so much. If each incident represents a certain amount of water getting it, you can only put so much in there, and it overflows. It's going to make a mess,
Right.
and you don't have any control of what that mess is going to be. And so I think that's one of the things I want to point out is, hey, obviously, if you have a loved one die, it's going to be, hey, everybody tends to show up to the funeral and they pay their respects. And they hug you on the neck, kiss you on the cheek or whatever, and then everybody goes about their business. You still have a massive healing point after that.
Right, right.
And people tend to look at that as saying, okay, well, it's not one of those instances, so let me keep it to myself. Well, no, it very well may just be something where, hey, you need somebody to slap a little Band-Aid on it,
Right.
because of the location, you can't reach it or whatever. And that is a lot of what our life is. That's a lot of what the people go through, because you only have... Statistically, the average citizen only goes through 2 to 3 critical incidents throughout their life. But we respond to it all the time.
Right.
Regular Joe Blow guys have decided, hey, I'm ending it, or and this is going to be it. And so we show up and we have to pick up the pieces, try to help out with the family as best we can. But we're in uniform, so that's not really helping. And so I would say the critical incidents aren't necessarily where they need the most help. It's going to be on the small things of hey, look, I'm injured and I need something to do, and we never let it heal up. Well, if you get a cut on your arm, and you don't use alcohol or some type of antiseptic or whatever, and you allow that sucker to get infected, you run the risk of gangrene for something that a Band-Aid could have fixed.
Right, right.
And so I think it's kind of the same thing where, if we're not sitting there and taking advantage of helping each other and you're not running up, hey, I'm certified in medical aid, can I help you? You're not doing that crap.
Right.
But it's just having that conversation of, hey, let me give you a hand, and you can prevent something very, very minor from becoming something, very, very
Right.
major. And so I want to stress that to the people listening is sometimes it's just something simple as, hey, I got rode up today at work. I've had several of those, not in my law enforcement career, but in when I was going through college, I didn't really care about my job so much, and so I would do little things or whatever, and they were dumb. Don't get me wrong, I earned the write up, but it turned into I would get mad because they wrote me up, kind of like the same way a kid gets mad when he gets grounded. He did the thing that was wrong,
Right.
Whether whatever foolish delinquent act it was, he's still mad he got punished, and so I took that approach. But what that did was I had a decent little career, but I hated the job because y'all just gonna write me up. Well, you keep doing dumb stuff, of course they're gonna write you up. But
Right.
So it could be something as simple as that, all the way up to something as major as hey, you're bringing your kids to school and somebody runs a stop sign and T-bones you. Obviously that's a traumatic thing. You got your kids in the car. You worried about their safety. It could have been a life-altering thing, or it did become a life-altering thing, and you don't walk. You don't walk the same after that.
Right.
It changes your life, and so those incidents become scars, emotional scars,
Right.
and they change how, if you ever watch anybody who's been in a very serious auto accident or whatever, if it's on the interstate, like I got T-boned on the interstate, if you could figure that one out. To this day, if I'm at work, I'm not doing anything on the interstate if I can help it. Like if you call me to the interstate, that's one thing. I'm not stopping you on the interstate. You do 150 miles an hour. Good luck to you. Hope God's at the other end of that for you. But it's one of the things where it changes your walk. It changes how you act. If you've we've had people get robbed at your lower end hotels. Typically, that incident makes you not want to go to those lower end motels. Like you change your life.
I'm gonna pay the extra $50 and stay at this nice motel.
You change your aspect on life as things happen. And unfortunately, sometimes things have to happen in order for us to get to that point where we say, no, I need to change how I'm living.
Right.
So,
well, let me ask you this.
Okay.
If I die tomorrow.
That was almost bad.
I saw your whole face.
I don't know what sound coffee makes in the mic, but they was about to hear it.
If I die tomorrow, and you get a new best friend /
I've got one in the queue.
Podcast co-host.
Yeah, I can have one by the end of the service. I'd have somebody else in the chair.
But who would you be buried next to?
Cremation, babe.
Okay. Who would you have your ashes next to on the mantle?
I don't know. Probably not yours. Something about having a wife and a family and everything.
I was waiting for you to.
It's not going to be you. But no. Silly jokes aside, or trying to be silly jokes. Y'all can rate that in the comments if you want, whether it was a decent joke or not.
That was solid.
But it changes your life, and that's one thing that I want to bring up where, especially as we feel the role of fathers and mentors to some people, where, you have an injury on your hand or whatever, and your kids will look at that because my son will, he'll grab my hand and he's always looking at different stuff or whatever, and he plays with my wedding ring on the hand and stuff like that, and so if he sees a scar or whatever, he may ask about it, what the story was behind it or whatever.
Right.
And we don't have an issue sharing those. Hey, this is one where, like my dad's got one on his hand that he tells a story about. He got, stuck with a fishing hook in his hand. He doesn't mind telling that story. And some of them are a little bit more detrimental. For example, you've got gunshot holes on your body. You may timing and place may factoring into that, whether you're telling that story or not. It's probably not Christmas dinner type material.
Depends on your family. Mine's kind of demented.
Right. But there's a time and place for it. But still, there's you'll pass that information on to your children.
Right.
Why do you think we don't do that with the emotional side of things? The emotional scars and hey, these things factor into how you're living life. Why don't we? You don't see that getting passed on.
Right. Well, it's funny you mention that because speaking of my gunshot, I remember the very next day. Having a bandage on my leg and everything, and my son coming in, and he was 3, I think,
mm-hmm.
and he was very, very concerned. I've still got the photo in my phone where we had to bandage his leg up,
right?
And he wanted to sit next to me, did not leave my side, and his main focus was, "Are you okay? And did you get the bad guy?" And of course, oh yeah, we got the bad guy, and he's going to jail.
Right.
But we didn't talk about like the mental factor of it all because one, he's 3, he's not gonna grasp that. But we don't want to look weak in front of our kids. You don't want. It's part of the cycle that we have to break from our previous episodes that we've been talking about. We have to break that cycle, if nothing else, so that our children feel confident and safe coming to us when they have those emotional or invisible scars that we
mm-hmm.
can't see. And I stress that today's society more than when we were coming up, because how many kids do you know when you were coming up that ended their life before graduating high school?
Right, not the first one.
But today's society, I mean, we're seeing it left and right. You've got kids getting cyber bullied. And
I
Old
understand
school
that
me's not with
to an
it.
extent. I get it, but at the same time, it's a different world than what we grew up in.
Exactly, and that's
And so it's like trying to explain a car crash to somebody born in the 1800s. They're
right.
not going to understand why there's so much trauma there. And so I understand the cyberbullying to an extent, but also, you know, how much confidence was not instilled in that child.
Exactly.
And that's coming from somebody who was bullied, as a kid. Like we grew up
Still
poor.
bullied as an adult.
I had, pants were too short.
Right.
And clothes what weren't name brand.
Everything was a hand-me-down.
We had Payless shoes. We didn't wear Nikes.
Right.
And stuff like that, or at least for a period of our life. I will give my dad. He tried his best to limit that as much as he could, but you can
Right.
only do so much. And so I remember, it's, having that bullying aspect as a kid, and yeah, it did have some type of emotional baggage with it. I'll give it that.
Right.
But I don't understand where we got to kids saying, "Hey, I'm done." Like I
Right.
don't,
Not
I
only
don't
that, but
understand
like
that.
actually having the knowledge of doing it,
Right.
and like how to do it, effectively.
Right.
And that's why we've got to break that cycle. Not just as fathers, but as parents in general. You've got to build a trust and a confidence in your children that either you didn't have as a child, or to boost their self-esteem to the point that, and I mean, you've talked to my kids, they talk most trash better than most adults.
Right.
And granted, one of them is going to get punched in the mouth. I already know it. It's going to be something he said. I may have given away which one I think it is, but in the totality of the circumstances, he's not going to be afraid to speak his mind.
Right.
And the same thing with my daughter. They have a confidence about them that is going to make them succeed because they believe they can. And I'm never going to prove them wrong as far as what they can and can't do in their life. And so I know I need to work on being more communicative in feelings.
Right.
And it's something like I've started with my son because the world is cruel. Let's keep it real. The world is a cruel, ugly place. I don't want him crying in public. I don't want him crying when he loses a game. I don't want him crying when he's not doing well in sports or in school.
He doesn't get what he's been working for.
Right. But when we get home, we have a sit down. Like it's something I just started doing within the last year. If something's bothering him or something's not right, we have the time and place conversation before school because he hates waking up. He hates going, in the mornings. He's doing great in school, but he hates going. We have that conversation about what kind of day are we trying to have? Because if you start your day off in a bad mood, it's going to be a bad day. Like
Right.
you have to change your mind frame to elevate your day. And like we said, you got to fake it till you make it. I wasn't born with this confidence.
Right.
This came from years of conditioning with my dad, who I've seen cry one time, heard cry one time. Won't get into that.
Poor kitty cat.
Right. Love my dad to death. That is the definition of a man's man in my eyes. But there was never a time where my dad, when my mother passed away, he literally looked at me. We're in a room. My mother is laid dead in a bed. And he looked at me and goes, "All right, kid, you're the rock of the family." Grabbed a bag and walked out of the room. And I was like, "What?
What does that mean?
What? I thought you were the rock. I don't have the mentality for this." And that was like my only emotional conversation that we ever had. My dad and I never talked about my mom's passing. We never talked about anything. And my dad is old school mentality that I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. before the sun comes up. I'm going to go to work, and I will see you after the sun goes down, and my job is done. I'm going to give you roof, food, clothes. Don't ask me for gas money. That was my dad. Now, my little sister's a little different story because she's a spoiled shitface. But it's a whole different life now than, say, when our grandparents, when they were popping out
Right,
9 and 10
right.
kids, they were doing it for help on a farm to make ends meet. Whereas our parents were like, all right, let's have 4 to 6 kids and oh shit, we both got to get jobs. Where nowadays people are like, like that. I might have one or two, and I better have a wife with a good job. And
Right.
like, that's why divorce rates have skyrocketed. I mean, kids are what they are today.
Right.
We're not teaching our children the right ways to do things.
Right.
And I've got a 21-year-old son. He refuses to have kids. He's like, nope. Saw what I did to my mom. Saw what I did to my dad. I'm not having kids. Like, it's just too much of a financial drain. I'm like,
I think that's them learning from visible
Right.
scars that they can see.
right. Because we were both, neither one of us were 18 when that kid was born. So it was for him, it was like he knew
The struggle.
the struggle, right. And he knew where it sent his mom down the dark roads that she went through. He knew that I joined the military because that was the only way I could possibly fathom to support everything and do what I needed to do. But again, that's a sacrifice you make as a father, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go to war and good luck. And then you come home, your kid's, a year old, walking and talking and is staring at you like a stranger. And you're like, well, I mean, that's on me. My bad.
Right.
6 months later, I'm going back to war. So, but to get back on track with our scars, that's something that we've got to do for not only our children, but for ourselves. And we've got to find healthy ways to combat the scars you can't see. And I know we were talking some of the ways that we've been researching and finding out about from certain individuals giving us information about the way that they treated themselves, the way that they help others. One of them is a gentleman. He does therapy, but he does it by exercising with the patient. Now, the exercising is not gym rat. It's not, going and drinking whey protein and pre-workout and all that stuff. If you're into that, kudos. But this guy's going out for walks. He's going out jogging, and he's taking clients with him, and they're having conversations while they get exercise. And it is science. It is proven. Blood flow and exercise makes you feel better.
Right.
Granted, it probably sucks at first because, I know if Mike and I go jog a mile, you wouldn't.
I'm not jogging
I
nowhere.
was gonna say we lost you at jogging.
Yeah.
You're not getting me to jog for no
Right.
reason.
Right.
I got to have a reason to do it. But I know that when I got shot, I knew that I had to do something to make sure physically that, one, my leg was better, but two, I wasn't letting people down at the job. Because that's the last thing you want to be is a weak link in the chain. And that's the only reason I ran. But once I knew I was good, I was like, all right, I don't need to run.
Right.
I'll wait till somebody runs for me, and then I'll, But there are healthy alternatives than, what was that thing you said the other day about finding the recliner and the remote in your hand the most comfortable position or something like that?
Well, that was from some guys that were significantly overweight at a job when, I was still 20, 21 years old.
Right.
And I was being arrogant with them, telling them that, hey, look, you take in, you're doing a physical job, so hey, you need to start getting in shape. Maybe look at a gym membership or whatever. And the guy told me, he said, the longer you work, he said, you're going to reach a point where you're going to realize, as life goes on, you have a family, that when you finally get some time off, the most comfortable that you'll be is when you're in your recliner with that remote in your hand. And I'll argue, while he's got a point there, that seems to be the mindset for a lot of guys, where it's, hey, let me just get home, and that's where I'm going to relax.
Right.
But you're sitting there and you're filling your brain with all this stuff coming off the TV, and I'm not talking bad against TV. By all means, go watch TV. I enjoy movies like that. That is my stress relieving space. I like going to the movie theater. I don't care if I go by myself. I'd like to go with a friend, but I'll go by myself.
Right. Which was still weird
And-
that was our.
Right.
You want to go watch a movie with me?
But I like watching movies, and I don't want anybody talking in it. I want to
Right.
enjoy. I want to disappear for however long the movie is, and immerse myself in it. So, it's one of the things where I understand relaxing and watching TV.
Right.
But when that is your, hey, I need to get through this day, and then I can be there, it transitions into, the severe obesity and everything
Right,
else. And so
right.
now you're taking kind of like the example we gave where, hey, you got a small cut. You're tired from work is a trauma. Just being exhausted and burnt out, that's a trauma. It's not that major of a deal.
Right.
It can be fixed very easily,
But
or
over time, it
relatively
becomes
easy.
taxing.
But right, it can become gangrenous. In this case, that's what happened with them was too much time just sitting where you're comfortable, and where you can just kind of veg out. Now you're all of a sudden Cartman from South Park,
Right.
you don't now you're light years behind where you need to be,
Right.
and so it's all about handling it in finding a better outlet than just let me crash,
And I think, to be fair, we as men, we're very simple tracked minded. It's not a million miles of train
Right.
going every which direction, and we're constantly in our brain. But it's literally, my brain could go 100 miles an hour, or it can go boo, and like there's nothing going on. Like it's
Right.
just toned out. And like I know for me, I can put a TV show on the TV, and I could sit there for 2-3 hours with the TV just playing. I'm watching TV, but I'm not watching anything, and I'm not thinking anything. Everything in the world is just calm,
Just quiet.
in that moment. It's TV's loud, fans on, AC's going, but I don't have a thought or a care in the world in that window. And I catch myself after work every day, get in, it's about 4:30, I take the dog out, he handles business, we go get in the recliner or we hop in the bed, and I just let the world go quiet. And the TV's on, like I said, fans on, AC's on, dogs, being stupid on the bed or in the recliner, but everything's quiet to
Right.
me. There's no thoughts. I'm not stressing over anything. I'm not worried about what happened at work or what's going to happen at work. And I know that a lot of times for our counterparts, they don't understand that the silence is deafening to the point where they're like, hey, take the trash out. Hour later, you haven't moved, and they're like, well, why haven't you taken the trash out? I'm like, I'm sorry. When the hell did you tell me to take the trash out?
Oh no, so I'm a little bit different.
Oh, you heard her say it.
I
didn't
heard
you?
her say it. I just don't want to do it, and then I forget.
Right.
But it's one of the things where there's a statistic where and don't quote me on it. I know the guy side of it. I don't know the female side because I feel like they don't know the female side either.
Fair.
But it's where the male brain can literally focus on nothing,
Right.
at any given time,
Yes.
and have no thought process, no activity other than let me keep this dummy alive. And so basic essential functions like breathing and your heartbeat. That's
Right.
about it.
I'm good with it.
And
Blink.
the human or the female brain goes through, I think it's like 20 different things at one time constantly.
Right.
And my wife is like she'll will sit there and she's like, hey, what are you thinking of? Or what are you thinking about or whatever. I'm like, nothing. She has no clue what that means.
Right.
And so it's one of the things where I always found that interesting. But
So where I was going with that was, we as men, we're natural problem solvers.
Right.
That's the talk of the town right now, is that with conversating with our counterparts and everything else, is that they come and vent, or they give us problems, and we rattle off a solution, and they don't like it. I think, and this is opinion, this isn't factual based or anything else, I genuinely believe that ties into why we don't go to the doctor. Because if I go to the therapist and the therapist says, well, hey, you're depressed, and they give me the solution to my problem, I don't always think that's the right solution. So I'm going to tell you right now, if I go to the doctor and she's like, you need to run 5 miles a day, doc, I'm going to have this problem for the rest of my life.
right.
Like, I'm not running 5 miles a day. But I think part of our fear is outside of the financial side of it. When that doctor comes in and says, hey, these are your problems, I don't have a solution for that because I'm not a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I watch House, but let's be honest, that only gets me through nursing school. Just kidding, nurses. But you're going to go to a doctor because you have a problem you can't solve. So I have to admit, I can't solve this problem. Now, if it's something like I got a rash or I got a bug bite or something like that, and I know I need medicine,
Right.
I can't prescribe the medicine, but the doctor can.
Well, so I look at it from a different standpoint. Like, because I agree with you that, hey, it's something that you can't solve. I don't go to the doctor rarely ever. Like, I'll tell my wife, hey, look, I've got to go. And that's once in a blue moon. She knows when I
Right,
say,
right.
hey, I've got to go to the hospital, something has happened, And I remember there was one year, man, I was sick as a dog. This is pre-COVID, back when we had other diseases than just COVID.
Right.
Now it seems like everything falls into that. But anyway, I remember I was just sick as a dog, man. I couldn't, like, everything, my whole body hurt, couldn't move, throwing up and everything, and heads pounding and all that other stuff. And so I called her and said, look, I need to go to the doctor. What do I need to do? I've never scheduled a doctor's appointment in my life.
Right. Right.
And she's like, look, she called one of our friends, Allison, to pick me up and bring me to the urgent care or whatever, because I was like, I'll go to the emergency room. She goes, no, not with your insurance, you won't, And so we go to I get brought to urgent care, and the doctor, I'm hands down feeling the worst I've ever felt, and
Right.
and before a bunch of women get on there, because I know somehow. We set up a podcast to help men, and a majority of our or a large portion of our audience is women. Before y'all start, making fun of me, oh, it's a man cold or whatever. This was not the man cold. I don't fall into that. This was legit. Hey, I'm dying over here.
You had wrong dog.
Do what?
You had wrong dog.
I don't know.
Damn it.
So I get brought to the hospital, and I'm tell them all the different stuff, or urgent care. I tell them all the different symptoms going on, and they're like, yeah, you got a fever, you got this, you got that, and all this other stuff. Here's some Tylenol. And I get a prescription for Tylenol. I'm like, bro, I got Tylenol at the house, and it didn't cost me $350.
Right.
And 4 hours of sitting in a waiting room catching whatever. God knows what else is floating in that waiting room.
Yep.
Or I could have just stayed at home, and so I went home, took my Tylenol, and went back to sleep, and felt miserable for another 2 or 3 days. And so it was one of the things where...
Did you fill the prescription?
No, I didn't fill the prescription. That would have cost money. But it's one of the things where, you take in... I now had to pay $350...
Right, to get Tylenol.
To get Tylenol that I already had, I find a lot of... obviously, hey, if I've, cut my arm off or whatever, then by all means, bring me to the doctor's office. But now if it's just because I'm feeling bad... No, we're going to give it a couple of days,
Right.
And
I'm gonna make it
it's not me thinking, hey, if you go to the doctor because you got the sniffles, I'm not saying you're weak. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I'm not doing it because I can't afford it,
Right, for Tylenol.
And that's what a lot of guys go through. But at the same time, and this is where, I think the father aspect comes into play. Because I had an incident with my son where he just felt a little bad. I was like, you'll be all right, give it a couple of days. And that turned into him having a major issue where,
serious thing, right.
6 days in ICU. Now I look at it where when he has something going on, he's got my attention. Like, I'm paying attention to everything. And,
right.
And if I could bring him that moment, I'd fill the hospital up with him if I could. And my wife's got to kind of rein that in a little bit, where she's like, hey, let's give it a minute.
Down a second.
It might legit just be a sneeze. And so it's kind of a different. And as weird as it is, him going into ICU for 6 days really became a massive event for me, traumatic event for me, or whatever, where I struggled for a while, and that changed how I'm looking at life with him. But I'm too stupid to apply it to my own life.
Right.
If
right.
Hey, my chest hurts or whatever. You might be having a heart attack. No, not today. I'm not. That's inconvenient. I still got stuff I got to do. And so it's one of the things where I think a lot of, and don't quote me on this. I'm not saying this is scientific. Haven't run it through a study group or anything like that.
Right.
But I think a lot of the actions that guys do is just because we're stupid.
No, it is.
We're just dumb people. Well, that's all it boils down to.
When I split my leg with the tree that I was cutting, and that lemon rolled over, and I split that thing good. I called the emergency room. Like, I finally got through to somebody and was like, hey, what's the wait time? And they were like, excuse me?
Yeah, I'd like to reserve a room
for
one.
Yeah, I was like, how many people are in the waiting room? And she goes, sir, what are you trying to do? And I was like, I'm not coming up there to spend 5 hours to get 8 stitches in my knee. Like, just tell me how many people are there. She was like, sir, this is not a restaurant. You can't call ahead. And hung up on me. So I was like, all right, screw it. And I went in, I flushed it out, and I super glued it shut with a weep hole at the bottom. And I was like, we're good.
Right.
And then, like, 3 days later, I ended up going to the hospital because the glue had come out. And I was like, it's 2 in the morning.
Right.
I should probably get a doctor to look at this. The doctor said it was so clean, he thought it was a fresh cut. He was like, but clearly there's some healing, so I can't sew it up. And I was like, well, if I'd had sutures I'd have done to myself. Coolest doctor ever. Not gonna say his name because he may get in trouble, but he definitely gave me 10 suture kits to take home so I could give myself stitches.
Well, so and for the readers at home or viewers at home, not readers because you don't read our voices. Part of this conversation regarding the hospital, not going to the doctor, is in response to Gina made up last name's email that she sent. Yeah. She asked a question. Hey, why don't guys go to the doctor? Or and some of it is we're stupid. Some of it is hey, we got other stuff to do. So rub some dirt on it, and keep moving.
I can't afford it.
The other part of it is it costs money. But another instance that I had was whenever I got I had a call that I had one night working a wreck. Had to use a fire extinguisher on a car, and the powder from the engine, when I blew it into the engine compartment, come back and got into my eye, and it seized itself to my eyeball, and it shut my pupil down. Where as your pupil gets light and stuff, it contracts and expands and all this other stuff. It stopped doing that. It just said, yeah, I'm done. And so hands down the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, because a solid dark room and I'm still just like staring at the ground because it's too much light type thing going on. And I was at work. I had to call a friend of mine who was a supervisor. I was like, hey, I need you to bring me to the hospital now. He goes, Mike, you're half a mile from the hospital. Just drive yourself. I'm like, I can't get out of the bathroom. And so he legit had to come to the substation, grab me and walk me to his car, walk me into the hospital, set me down. And I remember being in uniform, sitting in a waiting room, can't see anything, and I'm by myself. Like, he's done had to leave and everything. And I sat in that waiting room as not asking for preferential treatment, but at the same time, still an officer. There are people who obviously hate law enforcement or whatever.
Right.
But I'm an officer in uniform, sitting in a waiting room, and I've got to stare at the ground with my eyes shut. And every time, like, I'll open them to see what's around me, and then I've got to shut them because they're just like tears are pouring out of it.
Right, it hurts.
It's super painful and everything. And so it's like, okay, I'm trying to get some help. And I remember sitting there for, I want to say it was like an hour and a half, and it reached a point where I was messaging my wife, hey, come get me. Like, I'm tired of this. And then they wound up calling me back. But in the middle of me sitting there, I want to say it was right about the hour mark. I watched these two, we'll call them sturdy gals, as a friend of ours says, and I'm talking about just massively obese.
Right.
And I'm not making fun of them, but that was the circumstance that happened. Was they walked in complaining about chest pain, which makes sense. I get it. I've got family members and who have had heart attacks before in the past, so I understand how serious of an issue that is.
Right.
But they're complaining about chest pain as they're holding a bag of Burger King in their hand. Like, you were in so much pain, you stopped by Burger King first.
On your way
to the emergency room. So I'm like, okay. And they immediately, like, they walked in, hey, this is what we've got, and walked to the back. And I'm like, okay, now I just want to go home, And so it's one of the things where sometimes it's, when we finally do have that circumstance where it's, hey, I need some help now. And you don't get that help because somebody is taking advantage of a system.
Right.
That I think that drives us away from it. But also it changes. That's honestly a lot of why we are the way we are to begin with, is because when we finally do have an issue where hey man, I got this going on or whatever, we either go to the wrong person and they they give us the wrong advice, or now your business just got spread across the department or the office or whatever, wherever you work, and now everybody's making fun of you.
Right.
Hey, you had a bad moment, like we had an incident where a guy, young guy, he was in a down spot, he was in a bad spot, and he was feeling suicidal. I remember we talked to him, and he took and he didn't want anybody to know, because they had found out before and they were making fun of him, as if he was some weak person or whatever. And we're like, hey, look, we're trying to get you some help. And we let him talk for quite a while, rather than just, hey, get in the ambulance and go type thing. And I think that's where we are failing ourselves, across the board, because when guys do come to us for help, we either give the wrong advice or we take and we criticize them.
Yep.
And then hey bro, I just got off the phone with this guy. And can you believe this bullshit that he's got going on?
Right.
Like, well, of course your wife left you, or whatever, and we do way more harm than good because now that dude's never going to talk to you again.
Right, because he thinks you're going to make fun of him.
Right. And so I think that's where, we when you try to share your trauma or try to share your scars, other people make fun of you, it shuts you down. And that's,
it's where
we've got to do better than that.
It's where that dark humor that we have to mask the actual pain we're suffering from, it's where that kind of it takes a negative effect on how we handle everything else in life.
Right.
Because it's like I don't want to confide in you if I know you're going to make fun of somebody else that confided in you,
Right.
whether it's professionally or personally.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and let's get to the second part of Miss Gina made up last name's email, because we did make the promise. Hey, you send us an email, we will find a way to discuss it.
Right.
So we'll discuss it, and I want to say she asked something about why do we act like goofballs, or why don't we act more like goofballs?
I think it was more. Oh, it's okay. It's okay to show a kid side in your everyday life, home or at work. And so, to her credit, we actually 100% agree with her. Catch either one of us with our
Right.
sons and a Nerf gun, and tell you what, it's war, and
Right.
we have purchased each other Nerf battle gear and equipment.
To make it unfair for the kid.
Correct. Correct.
Because I'll give the kid a little Nerf gun, but he has no idea.
Right.
My buddy dropped off 2 Nerf ball grenades to me.
Right.
know?
Which
And-
are phenomenal.
Right. So it's I agree. You should have those moments where you act like kids and you
Yeah.
act like goofballs or whatever. Unfortunately, we get so focused on having to be serious all the time,
Right,
because
being an adult.
especially growing up, it was, hey, act your age.
Not your shoe size.
You're 16. You should, you're becoming a man. You need to start being serious or whatever. Well,
Right.
Well, that's also drives you to where you lose your sense of humor, or you're not fun to be around.
Right.
And so we agree. You
100%
should
agree.
But I think there's a time and a place. I
Right.
think we could all benefit from relaxing a little bit more.
Right. Well, because I would say, like, for instance, you're a little bit more serious than I am. I joke around a whole lot more
Right.
Than you do, and not a bad thing. Like, it's a decent balance, but my thought process on it, the reason I am the way that I am is because most of my adult life has been, serious situation after serious situation. And so if I don't have to be serious, I don't want to be serious.
Right.
But I also see it as a response to others' trauma. So, like, if I know we're in a situation where everybody's being serious and somber and whatever, I'm gonna crack a joke.
Right.
I'm not the guy that you look at and go, hey, be serious. It's not gonna happen. I'm gonna laugh. Like, don't tell me not to laugh, because I'm gonna laugh. But as a dad, like, I know that there's that time that I dial in with the dad voice and everything else. But we've talked, you put 5 dudes in a room and a table full of Nerf guns, you're coming into a Nerf
Right.
war.
Right.
Like, it's
whether you were ready for it or
right.
not.
Like, don't open the door. Somebody's laying and wait for you to come in. We've either teamed up and the first one through the door is getting waxed, or we're killing each other.
Right.
But
With Nerf darts.
Nerf darts. Yeah.
Don't cancel us just yet. Like, give us a couple more
Give it,
weeks.
yeah, right. We'll get there. Not yet. But no, so we 100% agree with Gina made up last name, as far as you've got to have fun in life. And
Right.
that ties into what we're talking about and what we're going to talk about in our next episode. And that's, if you allow yourself to get stuck in that darkness, that quicksand that we've established is not as serious as we thought it would be as in our childhood, and you don't find yourself finding a way out or finding a bright side or whatever, be a kid for a little while. Fuck it, just go have fun somewhere.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And I will say, go ahead and do all the podcast stuff. We, the way that our effectiveness is gauged is by followers and subscribers. So if you haven't had an opportunity yet, stop being lazy, and I need you to go hit that subscribe button, hit that follow, share, comment, whatever it is you want to do, all the podcast stuff. But in the meantime, also, send us an email. Coffee&theBull at yahoo.com.
Yep.
Send us an email. We're going to take and we're going to bring it up. We may let you respond to you and say, hey, look, give us a couple episodes. We're going to tie you in because we're going to make it fit. But we do want to hear from you. We want to hear what you got going on. And also, if you look in our comment section, we got some people who are being kind of rude.
A little ugly.
Just, a little ugly. Y'all can rein that in just a little bit.
You will notice though that the responses you get, that's us.
Right.
That's
so we're going to respond, and it's kind of planning the first person who's going to get roasted on here. But as of yet, we haven't had any issues with that yet. So guys, if you like what we're doing, let us know. If you don't like what we're doing, also let us know. For now, toodaloo.
Stupid.